Hello, it's Bonnie, and today we're going to start with making our own stenciled background, a little bit different than what I've done before, and I'm going to be using all three of these stencils. And the stencils I'm using, this one is called Swirling Snow, this one is called Water Stains, and this one, which I've used just recently, is called Magical Dots. Pretty sure that's right, yes. So I made myself a 6x6 inch piece of paper cut out, and I'm going to be using my matte from my media matte board, Tim Holtz, and as you can see, it's been used. And I'm going to be using some Distress Oxide and some Distress ink. And two of those is that I am going to be using is Scattered Straw. And I'm just going to do a bunch of stamping on here because I'm going to have a subtle background, but I'm just going to have a subtle background, I guess, which is the best way to say it. And I'm also going to include the colors, the distressed ink colors. And I'm going to use antique linen, just a little bit of that on here. This is a little bit darker though. If that shows up a little bit, we'll see. And I'm also going to be using mustard seed. And I'll be using these again when I do the stencil. So just to let you know. There we go. Okay, so I have the ink on there like I want for right now. I'm going to use my Distress sprayer and get some bubbles up on there. I think you can see them. Okay, I want it to be broken up a little bit to get it that way. And I'm also going to, I don't want the square edges to be shown, so I'm going to use my fingers to kind of break it up even a little bit more. Okay, paper towel, and I'm just going to take my paper and just kind of like dab it in there throughout. Just give me a little bit of, as you can see, I just want a little bit of splashing through there. So that's what I want. And then I gotta let that dry, and I'm gonna come back in and do some more. Okay, so I let that dry up, and now I'm going to do a second layer, and I left it just the way that I had it when I stopped. I'm just going to add some of these more dots to it so you can see how I'm doing that to give that a little bit more texture. So that's all we're going to do, and I'm going to heat that up, and then we're going to get out the stencils. Okay, so now that that's all dry, I'm going to, it just doesn't matter which direction you want to go in, I'm going to go ahead and use the Swirling Snow first, and I'm going to be using the Fossilized Amber, and it's the darker of the two colors that I picked, and I'm just going to randomly go over some of this, not all of it. I can always come back and add whatever I want to it, but I wanted some of these dots in the outside area. And like I said, I have three that I pulled. I might not use all three, but I know that I wanted some of these dots in the outline area. So that one's not showing up a whole lot, so that means I need a little bit more. Or I need to use the next color that's darker. Let's try this again. Yeah, they are showing up. It's very, very subtle. So what I want, and I wanted subtle, but I want a little bit darker, so I'm going to go with the next color up. And that would probably be mustard. Let's see. Mustard seed's not going to be dark enough either. I can tell that straight away. So I'm going to do Wild Honey. That's darker. Orange. So that's going to work. It should. Okay. Make sure I have the right brush. Let's give this a try. Because that did show up. It's just very subtle. And I want it to have a little bit more. There we go. It has a little bit more to it. Not a lot. I'm not going to make it as hard. I'm going to rub a little bit lighter, but you can see it. I did want it to kind of blend in, but at the same time, I wanted to be able to see it. Because sometimes you do tone on tone and you can see it. This one didn't want to show up as much, probably maybe because of the layers I already did, I don't know. But I'm going to put some down here. Check that out. So yeah, you can kind of see that there are a little bit of spots. And I might add more to that. This is called water stains. And I'm going to start adding some of those throughout the back. I am going to push a little bit harder to get that. See how that looks? Yep. Just want that look in the background. And this one works really good for getting these like bubble spots in the background. I really like that. So it's just like, I don't know, just giving you all different kind of, I think you can, yeah, you can see that better like that. So I'm going to add more down here. I really like this water stain one. This is exactly what I was looking for to making this, so. And you can add color, it's just I was trying to make a subtle background for a reason, so for the second part of our video. And I think that's looking pretty good. I might add a little bit more of the swirling snow, but because I like those spots too. So let's do that. A little bit more. And you could just be random. It's just kind of playing. It's kind of fun. Yeah, I like that. I don't think I'm going to be needing the, I think I've got enough going on there, but we'll go ahead and pull, because I got the magical dots out, we're going to go ahead and pull it and put that on here anyway. I really like these very tiny dots here too, but they're very similar to this, that part's similar to the swirling snow, but the bigger ones are not. So I'm going to go with the bigger ones on here, because I don't have very many solid, I just have the broken up ones. So that works really well, giving me the variety. Yeah. Okay. Excited about that. Put a little bit down here. You can see there's all different kinds of larger circles on here. These are our solid, everything else is broken up, so that works. Okay, so that's what we're going to have for our background. So then the next step will be, we are going to pull out two things. We're going to pull out, this is called the Magical Hollow. It is Fairy Hugs Enchanted dies. And this is what that looks like. It's substantial. And I'm also going to be using Fairy Hugs Fairy Dictionary. And I'm going to be using some craft paper. So I'll go ahead and pull that out and we'll get going. Okay, so for this part I'm using craft paper like I told you. I am also using the Fairy Dictionary, and I've just put it on an acrylic block instead of putting it on my in my stamp, or what do you want to call it, stamp platform, because it doesn't really matter how this goes on because I'm going to be die cutting it. So I just want to get an impression on here, and it doesn't really matter. So that's all we're going to do is stamp this. Now, if you don't want to do something using this process, you could actually use paper, book paper, I was going to say a book page. But if you use a book page, you know they're very thin. And sometimes it even shows through when you go to use it and you die cut it or anything. So my suggestion to you, if you use a book page instead of using the craft like I'm using right now, my suggestion would be for you to put your book page on another piece of paper underneath and then die cut it. I would not die cut it because it's going to be too thin. I would not die cut it and put it on in your project unless, you know, because it's just not going to be substantial. It's going to wiggle too much. So anyway, this is all I wanted, is just some of this on here, and so that I could die cut this. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I wanted to add a little bit more. This is what it looks like after you cut it out. You could see all the words and stuff in that and how that's kind of really cool. I wanted to give it a little bit more dimension, so I pulled out Distress Ink Walnut Stain. And I'm just going through and kind of like trying to pull out places to make it a little bit darker and have a little bit more of a texture, or not texture, but shading to it. Probably underneath part, the light would be up above probably, so I'm doing more of the underneath part, or where the light wouldn't get to as much. So it gives it a little bit different, but not a lot. It's, again, subtle. And if I want it darker, the next color probably would have to be Black Soot to add to that. And I think I might just do that. I'm going to go ahead. I have that sitting here, the Distress Ink, and see what that gives us. Yeah, that's going to give me more of my shadow. So you can do both if you want, or you can add the Black Soot, but I'm not doing it really, really heavy. But I'm, like I said, I'm kind of like thinking of it as where the light would be. And the light could be on the inside, but not this case, so here we go. Put a little bit up above. Okay, so that's how that's going to be. You can see how there's a little bit of black to that. And it's going to be going on top of our paper, but we're going to also be creating a scene to go with that too. So we need to get that together. I think we're also going to do some more stamping along the side. So let's get going with that. Okay, so I decided I'm going to do some more of the Fairy Hug dictionary, and I do need to pay attention to which way this is going up and down. Even though I'm just going to randomly put it on there, you can still read some of the words. And what I'm using is VersaFine Clear Pine Cone. It's a brown to kind of like hopefully tie in with the Magical Hollow that I've already die cut. So I'm not going to use the acrylic block because I don't want this to go on here perfect. I just want to randomly add some of it to it. So and I can already tell I'm going to probably have to come back in here and lighten that up. All right. So we have some of that all over the place now. Okay. So how I'm going to lighten that up, because now that it's on there, I'm going to come back in with my Distress Oxide, and I'm going to actually use the scattered straw. And I know I just put my, there it is. I'm going to use a scattered straw, and I'm going to come back in there just to lighten that up just a little bit, because putting this over it does dull it. But I don't want to lose too much of what I have in the background either. And you know what else? Just to make it fun, I'm going to go ahead and spray this again and get some more water drops in there. Because I'm saving this out just to show you what I'm trying to do. This is going to go on there, but I'm still going to have my stamped thing in the center there. So that's the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and mist that a little bit with water, and then I'm going to dry it. I'll go ahead and show you how I'm going to mist it. Even though I don't want to get this all wet, I'll do it this way. Or better yet, I'll use my mat to spray it then. It won't mess up my background. You can see how I'm doing the big blotch. Okay, so I'm going to bring that over there right away and dry that off. Or, heat it. Okay, to start the scene, I went ahead and I did place the die cut on here in terms of what I want to put inside of the die cut. And then I had put acetate that comes with the stamp. And this particular stamp is called Lending Trunks, and there's 2 different ones in there, and I'm using the tallest of the 2. And I'm going to go ahead and still use the pine cone, VersaFine Clear Pine Cone. The lending trees are really cool. They're actually just tree trunks that have shelves carved out of them and with books on them. And I don't know, I know in the United States there's places where people have a lending place where they will put books that people can come and just take and then put their books in there. It's really cool. It's like a public, it's not like a public library, it's just more like a community, a sharing thing. It's called a lending library. So, and I think you have to look that up online to see where those places are located. If I find that information, I'll try to put that down in the description below. Okay, so we have our lending trunk on there. And again, I'll show you how the scene is coming. It's going to be going like that. And then I'm going to be using the new Reading Hedgehogs in this scene also. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything that goes together with them, and then I'll do some more stamping. Okay, so I know that I'm going to have this little guy, the Reading Hedgehog, sitting on top of this little trunk. Now this trunk comes from the sunflower table, and I'm just using this piece right here for him to sit on next to this trunk there. So I am going to mask off the bottom part of him, but I'm not doing an actual mask of him. So I know I want him to sit there, so I'm going to take that piece out, and I'm going to go ahead and set him on there, because I know where I want him to be. And then I'm going to stamp him also with a pine cone. Right there. Okay. And that looks great. And then what I'm going to do, instead of making a mask, you've seen me do this before, I just use a tiny piece of washi tape. And I'm gonna, it does pull up the ink slightly, just to be honest, but probably wouldn't if I waited a little bit. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put that little bit on him, and then I'm gonna put the trunk on. Now I am gonna do the trunk in a different color just because I don't really want it to match really well. I do want him sitting on it. So I am gonna go ahead and use Morning Mist, because I'm going to end up coloring this in anyway with brown, so it's not going to matter a whole lot. Okay. Now let's just see how that looks. Yep, that's going to work. So I'm going to do it one more time and make it just a little bit darker. Just wanted to make sure that I had that, and I do, not that I could have changed a whole lot. Okay, that's good. So that's the plan with that. Take that off. So that works pretty quickly when you know you can just rip a little piece to make it work. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. So then let's check out our scene. This is kind of like how I would really do it if I was working, instead of having it all planned ahead of time for you. So that's like what I want. I know right here, I'm going to go ahead and add a moon, and then I'm going to put a sentiment right there. So I'm going to get that part out to do that now. Okay, I've decided where I want the moon, or you could even call it sun. We've got yellow going on here, don't we? And I had to kind of like make sure that I had it all worked, because I also want to add the sentiment, and I had to consider where this sentiment was going to go at the same time, and I had enough space, and I do. So that's how that's going to go. I am going to use Chipped Sapphire for my halo for the sun moon. It's just I want to be able to define that it's there. And this color usually is neutral for me, and it usually works. So that's why I'm using that color. All right, let's take a peek at that. Yep, that's gonna work. And I always go back over just to soften it slightly. Okay, so let's go ahead and check that out again, how that's gonna work. I think that's gonna work well. And then I'm gonna put that sentiment on. I wanted to make sure that the sentiment would fit in, so however I put this back on, I'm going to make sure that sentiment is kind of centered. And this sentiment is new from HedgeHogs. It is called Joy, Sunshine, and Love. And I thought that really worked well with the sunshine, which is what I'm calling it on this particular card. So that looks like that's going to make sure that looks straight. Okay, I always try to line it up with this too. Yep. All right, I'm going to take this off so I don't get ink on it. And I'm going to go ahead and use, because I've used everything other than the stool, I'm going to go ahead and use the pine cone again. And it all kind of matches. And even though I've got this, you know, some of the lettering behind that, that still works. You can read that fine. You know, from when I stamped the Fairy Dictionary randomly behind. All right, so that's good. So now let's consider what the sentiment says. It says, friends, fill your life with joy, your soul with sunshine, and your heart with love. So I'm thinking our little reading hedgehog probably should have a friend on this with him. So I have to make sure that I'm going to have this in that position. And in order to make sure I put it back in the right position, I'm going to do a couple little pencil marks here for myself. So note that I know that I'm going to be lining this back up the way that I'm stamping his friend. Because it's really important because of how I'm going to stamp his friend. All right, so his friend is going to be one of the mini caterpillars, and he is going to be sitting on the edge of this tree. And in order to do that, I had to make sure of where that would be. So that's where he's going to be. Now he also, I'm just going to go ahead and stamp in the pine cone, because he can be colored in. All right, so he looks like he's floating. So with that die cut, he looks like he's sitting on the shelf. Now he does have a lot of lines in him, but with coloring, that'll kind of take away. I might have to accentuate his eye a little bit more, we'll see. But he's stamped really well. And you can see that he's there. So that is how that is all going to go. So before I put this die cut on, I'm going to color this all in, and then I'm going to put the die cut on. So I'm just going to show you that close up, and I'll go do my coloring, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like put together. Okay, so I wanted to show you before I put the die cut on what it looks like all colored in. And again, you don't have to color things in if you don't want to, but just to give you an idea of what you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that on now. I just didn't think you needed to watch me glue it on. Okay then, so that is our card completed and what it looks like with the die cut on there. And the other thing I didn't say, I also edged around with the walnut stain just to distress the edge a little bit so it all seemed like it was cohesive. So I just wanted you to see what it looked like when it was finished. So I appreciate you stopping by. I will have the products that I use below in the description, and hope to see you again soon.